This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans, so meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast. Thank you, Chris, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So today we're going to start with a game. This one's an interesting one, I will say. I like to make this one as strange as possible. So this one's called Market Me This. So I have a product for you, and you are going to market it to me in less than a minute if possible. You can go over the minute mark a little bit, but I'll allow it.
We'll see how if the coffee set in as I mentioned previously. Let's get it done though. Let's throw it at me.
Already, this is an interesting one. Okay, spaghetti scissors. If you want context, I can give them to you, but I think you can make assumptions.
It's those scissors that are made of spaghetti.
No, that would be great, actually. I was thinking, well, okay, if you want to market that, even better. I was thinking like scissors meant specifically to cut spaghetti. So like, when you like,
absolutely. I mean, slow start for me. So
quite funny.
Spaghetti scissors. Yeah, I think, keep it, let me just come up with something good here. How about
time?
What's the target market, the ICP? Just any kitchen goer? Is it? I'm just gonna brainstorm through this myself. Start.
Anyone that would eat spaghetti.
Okay. Start scissoring now with spaghetti. No, scissor. I'm kidding. Spaghetti scissor extravaganza starts now, or have fun. That was not meant to be inappropriate, but sometimes you have to push the envelope.
Gonna put the boundaries. That would get people's attention.
100%. Not to be inappropriate, but let's see what.
So funny.
The best scissors are for spaghetti. Spaghetti scissors. I think that first one really,
that one hit. I think that was a good one. I'm gonna be honest. I think that would get people's attention.
You might have to cut that. But
I don't think we should cut that. I think that is the funniest thing that's been said on the podcast in a while. So unless you want to cut it, I'm happy to keep that in.
Listen, I think that it's when we're talking about advertising and marketing, sometimes really there's a lot of it's about grabbing attention, and sometimes it is through methods that are provocative in that way, right? So
yeah, like the really so every time I look at a commercial that's really obscure, I assume it's for perfume or cologne. I don't know if you know the vibe that I'm just talking about.
I do. Yeah.
The other day I saw one and I was like, this has to be for perfume and cologne, and it was for a bidet. And I was like, that's weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the market, just like with spaghetti scissors, that might work too, right? Something really like just so vague, right? But high touch and has that really luxurious, minimalistic, sensationalist vibe. That might sell the spaghetti scissors as well.
Yeah, no, I think it would. I think Italian lesbians would absolutely love that marketing.
100%. There's a need for it now. I'm sure the data is behind that. It could be.
if you support a certain group, you're definitely gonna get a big boom of clients just from that particular.
You will. I mean, you'll get the boom and then you'll get the backlash. You'll get a little bit of both, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
the only reason, and I was hesitant to mention what I mentioned originally, and as I said, it might be a bit risque, but yeah, you definitely appeal to a market when you're doing these things, and yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the beast. You're going to have people who like what you did and who are attracted to it, and some who are not.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that it is, especially if you're doing a risk like that, I think that it's really interesting because if it aligns with your views or whatever, if you're going to like push away an audience, I think that that's more than fine, because you have an ideal client. Like, I don't know if like the alt-right would really like the spaghetti scissors campaign.
I don't think so. But they might buy it. They might buy it behind.
I didn't see the commercial,
scenes, but they're not going to publicly endorse it. That's
yes. Exactly. It's like the Republican convention with all of the people using Grindr, but they would never tell you they're using.
The most, I mean, we're all just human. I think at the end of the day, we all have our our flaws, and yeah, philosophically you can believe what you will, but at that individual level, we all have, I don't even know what the word we want to use is there, but I think
we all have a need for spaghetti scissors.
We do, or something of that nature, right? Something along those lines.
Well, to introduce the podcast as a whole, I think this was a great start to this. I'm so happy.
Just embarrassing. Please do not attack me in comments if people are going to be. Yeah, I promise this isn't how a meeting usually happens.
Well, welcome everyone to the Fully Managed Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you on your business journey. Maybe they're unconventional, but they're still tips. And I'm your host, Shannon, Benji's Partnership Coordinator, and I'm joined here today with a very special guest, Chris Moulton from Moulton Digital. Thank you so much for joining me today again. It's already a great start. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again. I mean, these days, any chance I can get with a good podcast, or to just get out there, and it's not just about myself. I think there's a lot happening in the space, and people are interested in what's taking place now, and I have been involved in it for quite some time. At least growth, right? Like scaling growth and marketing, and before that, advertising, as well as startups in parallel. So, so I think it's just an interesting time. There's so much going on. Love to just share the info. It's starting with, spaghetti scissors, and that's the last time I'll mention that one.
It's always, if there's something funny that happens on the podcast, I feel like it's a general theme for it to come up like 6 more times.
Yeah, 100%. It's a fallback. It's a nice fallback.
But I'm super excited to talk about you today, because scoping out your LinkedIn, being a little bit stalkery, knowing all about your life now. I'm like Nardwar. If you've ever seen those areas.
Yeah.
You've worked with a lot of interesting brands, like luxury brands, as well as startups. So you had like an extensive amount of experience. To start out, I would love to know what you think was like your biggest learning experience as like a marketing role, or maybe in the industry in general, because I know your roles have like kind of varied based on.
They have. And over the years. So I would give you maybe a few.
That's fine.
To different audiences, right? I would say that really early on, when I started out in the space, there was no, it was very intimidating. I went into this traditional ad agency and was asked to build out a digital department. And a lot of the stuff that fell under that umbrella, I had not had experience with at that time. I had significant startup experience and some failures, some really major failures, and some success. But aside from sheer tenacity and a natural inkling for a lot of these things. I went in and so this is more of that entry level and started handling, 6, 7 figure spends on paid and things of that nature. And a lot of it really early on was trial and error. And so there is a point where as a marketer, you're going to have to take that initial step and just be okay with the outcome. But I think the takeaway there is to hyper obsess, and that growth mindset is really important if you are in the position, which a lot of people end up, where all of a sudden they're managing these things, and it can be a little bit intimidating early on to just inform yourself. And these days there's a lot of technology, a lot of great tools that assist and really can go take the campaign the extra mile, or even help you scaffold is what I call it, like structure that initial, where a lot of brainstorming, and sorry about my dog. If he continues, we'll have to move him out. Yeah. And so that's one, is that just don't be afraid, and just, you have to learn this somewhere. And back when I started, there was no edX or really a Coursera, anything like that. It was just late nights, and learning with clients. And so that's what led me to go off. And the clients at this ad agency said, we want you to go out on your own. We will defend your space. One of them was a very large bank, a lot of people in alternative energy. And he said, we really like this data-driven approach, which leads to the next. And that is, don't be afraid to take a leap, right? To take that leap. More and more people seem to be doing it these days. There's less risk. I like to call it de-risking. And so don't be afraid to take that jump if necessary. And it makes sense. And you can see the bigger picture, work towards those longer plays. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on when I was doing that is I never took a percentage of revenue or equity in early companies. And so that led to, taking nice amounts of cash, payments, and being able to rapidly scale and have this lean team for a while, but it didn't pay dividends in the long run, right? Great for the reputation, but I would say if you have that option, to do a mix of percentage of revenue, and if you can, if it's an early enough company, to get some equity, and really diversify. And then the next is always stay on top of what's happening. Ironically, there's a book, or funny enough, not ironically, there's a book that was just released that I'm wrote a contributing chapter for, with some pretty big names in and outside of marketing funds, like the president of Rotary International, and the guy who coined frozen yogurt in the 80s and 90s. And so, so I would say just use the resources at your disposal and figure out where it is you want to be. Hopefully that's helpful.
No, that's extremely helpful. I think it's also, I like what you said about like making sure that you get a percentage of revenue even earlier on, because I think a lot of people aren't like, they still have imposter syndrome. I think sometimes working with such big budgets where they're like, I don't deserve this because I feel like I fell into this by accident. Like I was successful, like by accident. And I think that is something that, I wish people knew their worth earlier on, because they miss out on like a lot of financial gain that they kind of deserve. Whereas if you're helping a company so much, like insurmountably, where they are improving on a scale that they didn't expect, and it's because of you or your team or the team that you put together, then you do deserve a cut of that, because it's not, you're making them way more money than what you're being paid.
Exactly. And that's the key, right? Is make sure, and that's exactly what I was kind of getting at with that imposter. Like you have these huge budgets and all of a sudden you're like, what just happened, right? Early on. And the key is just, and I guess for me, looking back, it was easy in that initial position because I did work for someone else, right? Before going out on my own. And so I just said, we're charging this, right? And it wasn't make or break for me at that moment. It has become that, or did become that when I left. But I had no I just said, we're charging this. And they go, really? And I said, yes, absolutely. This is what we have to do. And this is the position that we're in. And we have these skills that other people do not have. And we're taking this tact of like growth hacking. And this was like 2014, 15. We're using the data and we're not, we're really results focused and we're able to show them what we're doing. So we, absolutely need to spend what makes sense, right? And not carry these loss leaders that that start out as loss leaders that go on forever, and all of a sudden it's just like grueling uh, to work with the client because you've set expectation and the bar, and all of a sudden if you go and change that, it's like, well, what just happened, right? So
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So how is the transition from being in this position? Well, one, what do you think taught you to believe that you're worth that cut? Like, because I think that's a transition that a lot of people sometimes don't even get to in like a marketing role. And I think that that's something that's really important is like figuring that out. Like when was that like a discovery for you?
So initially it was a discovery when I was under that like umbrella of the other company. When I just said we're 8xing this number you have because we need that in order to carry this forward. And then when the client said, absolutely, it makes sense, I had validation there, but that wasn't me, right? That wasn't my rate. That was the company's rate. And so the real validation initial, and I was still scared, or on edge about doing it, was when two of the clients got together and they said, we want you to leave. We need you to leave. We're not going to pay these rates unless you go out on your own, and we'll basically defend the space that you're in, meaning like legally, and give you some runway, and you can hire whoever you want. And so that was when I realized that there was worth with me, and it was not with the company that I was working for, doing this new endeavor first. But there's always going to be, and this still happens, right? Just the other day, I had someone call and say, hey, we need this done in like a month. Can you do it? I'm like, well, what's your budget? And, they throw out some number. And so you just have to learn to say no and know that everyone's not for you. I mean, it happens all the time, right? But you just have to know just hold strong. And so, yeah, you have to hold the line. And that's a hard thing to do when depending on your situation and if you're just getting started. So sometimes you can like do creative things like, hey, let's defer payments, right? Or let's bring in a third party to finance this situation for you. There's some cool tech that'll do that now, and this was not done before, because there are a lot of early companies that are cool and they just don't have the cash up front, but they can finance, and they do understand that go-to-marketing growth and marketing is very important at a certain point.
Yeah, it's very wonderful that you had that support from a client that was like, that liked utilizing your work specifically and liked you, but they were willing to support you outside of that company, because that's like, I feel like that's something that's kind of rare. So it's very cool to know your value through that as well. Like someone still wants to work with you specifically. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Hey, should we pause? Should I go put this guy outside?
Okay, so Chris, how was it like transitioning into founding your own digital marketing agency from working within other businesses before that? Because I know it's a very large jump for some people. Like it's scary, and there's it seems like you had that support, but there's also so many different things you have to navigate through.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard, but it's doable. So, I don't want to give anyone who watches this any give them false pretenses about what it takes. Now, when this originally happened, it was circa 2015 or 15. So I would say now there's so much at your disposal digitally to simplify, even whether it's accounting, all these things that you don't think about, setting up your business. So I would say that have a client or two lined up before you take the leap, if possible. And that's what allowed me to go out of the gate. And I've never been one to take funding or anything like that, or even loans. I never did earlier on. And, it was always an option, of course, but it's just something that if you can bootstrap and you can get at least one, but ideally 3 clients minimum, so that you're not losing sleep over the next deal, or you're prepared to hyperscale, as people call it in tech, right? To just really focus on scaling up front, knowing that you won't have that runway. But I guess to really say, in addition, it's about what you want, right, with your life. If you are, because I saw something the other day online. I'm in, in the Bay Area and in San Francisco, in that tech community, with founders, and advise a company or two here and there, and the VC world. And some people, everyone will tell you something different, but I would say that if you look at your typical founder and look at their exit, I'm not talking about like the 100Xers, but the typical company. You then break down their salary over the years that they work there and what they walk away with if they get an acquisition or something of that sort. It's not going to be that much more necessarily than you'd make at the senior level. And that's controversial because that's not my opinion. That's what people say. So I'm not to take flack for that. That's what some would say. I would say, if you have the growth mindset and you're not fulfilled, and I feel like more and more people are not, and you are willing to constantly learn, absorb like a sponge, and to get out there and to build a network or get a few clients, then do it. Then absolutely do it. But do it in a way that is unique. And I get 150 emails a day about, buy our system, buy, lead gen or more even. And people trying to, somehow getting my calendar link and trying to fill it up, and like private calendar links. It just really, really crafty, actually. And point being, find something unique, right? Like that is specific. You really enjoy enough within the marketing space, whether it's like ad tech or scaling early stage companies or working with enterprise companies as a consultant, really focus in and then build out from there. That's what worked for me.
Do you think that there's any substantial problems with the growth mindset and the idea that sometimes people may push too much too fast, or that maybe something isn't meant to be as big as it can become? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of like, what you see is not reality for a lot of people on Instagram, like especially influencers in the creator economy. It's just not realistic. A lot of the time they're renting the space, or most of the time they're renting the space, renting the car. It's an act. And so knowing that, that this is showmanship, a lot of it for what you're seeing on the daily. The other thing is the growth mindset can be really unhealthy, right? And balance in life is just as important. It took me a while to learn that, and some health issues, some serious health issues. I wouldn't just say that it was from work. Like it was also just luck of the draw, right? And so that said, I had a lot of perspective, and with all of these things that have happened, right? Life is always throwing curveballs to everyone. And yeah, I think this philosophy that used to be the dominating thought process, at least in a place like Silicon Valley and many others, that hustle culture, you need to work 22 hours a day, forget sleep, like sleep later, sleep when you die, right? They quote, that is not acceptable anymore. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
But what I was getting at is that growth mindset, just knowing that in the beginning, you're going to have to do things most likely,
Yeah.
that you don't want to do and have to sacrifice elsewhere. It's not forever. And if you're willing to do that, to give yourself a better life or to have more of what you want in the long run, whatever that may be, and not just financially, but in life, freedom, whatever it is for you, um, because we're all motivated by different things, and no matter what, society likes to say underneath it all, and tells us. So yeah, I would say just know that you will have some of that, but it's not every day. And balance super important. And that long game that I spoke of really early on is what it's all about. And so I think seeing what you want out of your career and manifesting that, but really practical pointers there, focus on a niche first and be really good at that, and don't jump on some train or system or something that creators are telling you. Obviously, what where that intersection of passion and work skill come together. And if you're a T level, meaning like you're really good at a bunch of things, but then really, really good at one or two, even better. If you're not, you'll learn along the way, right? So yeah, I would say balance is that the growth mindset is nice to have. It's important to execute. And I guess I'll just end on this note because I went down a little and just kept going there.
I think
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that was all encompassing. Like, I do think that that was very comprehensive to explaining. So I don't think that you went too long or anything.
Yeah, I would the last thing I would say is you see these things, and let's say someone is not faking it and that it is their life. There's a lot of work usually behind the scenes. So you see what happened when they hit a certain threshold, and all may be forgiven, or whatever happened prior to that is irrelevant. But there was a lot of work, and for some people there was a lot of backs down. A lot of things took place, unique to everyone, to get there. And so I guess just remember that, and I think everyone knows this, who works in this space and most in the corporate setting, that execution and delivery is going to be paramount to all of this.
Yeah, I think that's why I really love doing this podcast specifically, and people sharing their stories, because I like hearing about the lows, because I feel like places like LinkedIn and social and any kind of social media, people aren't sharing the lows as much, or they're sharing weird stuff that I don't want to know about. LinkedIn is a strange place.
Like spaghetti scissors.
Just spaghetti. People are very strange on LinkedIn. I feel like it was always like a professional place, and it's strange that it is very. Some people overshare and they don't know that they should not do that. In certain ways, it's very funny, but
they do.
Regardless of that, yes.
Well, they think they're channeling their brand is kind of like, right. And it's, so there's some do's and don'ts in that, down that avenue.
Yeah, because I very much support people sharing their lows, because I do think, there's difference in lows. Like if your wife left you, maybe you shouldn't share that on LinkedIn.
Right. 100%. And people do.
Yeah. And people do that. But I think more like when people have lows that contribute to their professional life that are not too personal, and I think that's up to the person. Like if they want to share that their wife left them, that's up to them, really. But I like when people share the lows, because I do think that being transparent about that is so important for the professional world, to learn that happens. Because I think that so many people who try to build something see all of these other people that have built something from the ground up, and that they've been successful the whole time, and that it's always been good things, and only good things have happened to them, and only growth has happened, and they didn't have any hiccups along the way. And that's just not true. That's not true for anyone. Like I'm sure that there are these very specific industries or businesses that have done very well and only done well, and that's like very infrequent. But the realistic part is that people work really hard to get to the point that they are most of the time. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely people, there's Nepo babies, I'm sure, that fall into things, but,
No.
or had money from the get-go, but, or got lucky, but they're more often than not, there is so much hard work that goes into getting to a certain spot. And people often don't show that hustle, I guess, publicly, because it's not picture perfect, or it doesn't look good, or maybe they think it will deter clients because they're so busy and they're going to think that they would overwhelm them for even trying to use their service or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I love that transparency, and I think that is what makes people, trust you more and actually believe that you're a real person.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement. It's one of those things where, like I said, there's just different paths, right? Different paths for different people. And there's nothing right or wrong about any of those paths. It's just unique to you. And again, like you said, 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, the people who have become successful have sacrificed to get there. And whether that's physical or social, whatever it may be, there's some sort of sacrifices they had to make for a certain amount of time along the way. It's not a absolute necessity, but it typically will happen at one point or another. And I think one of the other takeaways separate from this is really think unconventionally, right? And I think that's where I have been able to create impact, and where my bread and butter is in the professional space, not doing, those things that may seem so foundational or important, not just doing those, but really thinking outside the box and coming up with solutions that someone may not find elsewhere, right? And that may be specific to me, but I think that's a great philosophy for someone who's thinking about taking up this kind of endeavor, even if it's just starting at freelancing. Like, how can you position yourself uniquely and offer, your services or your capability to someone with that same unique vantage when there's so much noise all of a sudden? When I first started doing this, I will tell you, it took so much buy-in. To close a large client, it could take a year, and that still can be the case. But it's because people didn't understand there was a different kind of approach around marketing, and it wasn't so much data-driven. And now there's RevOps and performance marketing and growth marketing and, head of growth and all of these titles. They did not exist then, though. It was, marketer or TPC or SEO. And that was, just very what we would call conventional now. That said, don't be afraid to approach it from a different vantage. And I think that's the takeaway from that.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on, because you're like perfectly a little over time. And I truly think that's a really important thing that people should consider, is that, like, and I think that's kind of what everyone almost strives for in marketing. Like, there isn't a very specific way of doing things, even though maybe places like HubSpot might tell you that there is. And of course there's things that are known to work, but I think taking risks and, being innovative and creating different solutions for things is where people strive in. And obviously there's mistakes that happen along the way, or maybe not even mistakes, but just, it just doesn't work the way that you maybe even proved that it wouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I think that people learn from those. But I think that if you don't do that at all, then, you're just going to maybe not be happy or not show results in the way that they could be.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So, well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was really fun. The spaghetti scissors were a great start, but this was like entirely a really fun conversation. I enjoyed this.
I think so. I hope that there were some good takeaways.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you provided a lot of valuable information for our audience, so I really appreciate it. And a lot of wholesome information that people should know for starting their own business or their agency. I think
Which part are we talking about? The first 5 minutes, I don't know if that was wholesome. After that,
it was funny. I think the
Yeah.
right audience, the Penji audience has that sense of humor, I'm sure.
we're going to find out, aren't we? Yeah,
Thank you again
absolutely.
so much. This was a blast. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
thank you everyone for joining us, watching or listening. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope everyone has a lovely day. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.